remember Lily in Poland sharing stories of a stream that used to run down on the first beach and does not run there anymore on the Olympic Peninsula. She, as a young woman, worked as a midwife, and she remembered being called south to the village on the Ho River and walking across the backs of salmon. The salmon were packing streams so densely. And that's a story that I've heard multiple times from gray-haired elders. These are people who may not be alive anymore, but they had that visceral experience, and I felt that sense of majesty, that sense of a world that is gone. The overall health of our forest ecosystems is being compromised by the breaking of a primary nutrient cycle. And that primary nutrient cycle is the relationship between the mountain forests and the oceans. Salmon, in their cycling between the mountain streams and the ocean, travel all the way up the entire west coast out into the Aleutians in a cycle that can be anywhere from 2 to 5 years. Their bodies returning to the landscape through the entire watersheds brings back this incredible nitrogen and carbon flow of nutrients out of the ocean into the landscape. Almost all other geological and ecological processes slowly erode nutrients in the system. And this is the way the system reloads primary nutrients to life, carbons and nitrogens. One of the things that's happened in the Inchiwana, the Columbia watershed, is it has become the most dammed river system on the planet. The early dams did not have fish passage. We immediately saw extinctions beginning. At this point, most of the watershed does not have access to the salmon cycle. Humans are starting to replicate that cycle by throwing dead hatchery fish out on the sides of streams that don't have their salmon, and allowing animals who feed on that to then carry the nutrients into the surrounding landscapes. But this is something that's still basically cutting off our ecosystems from the primary nutrient source now for almost a century in some places. One of the most significant steps that we can be taking in building resilience and building our climate stabilization capacity of our region is to be reconnecting those ocean nutrient cycles with the mountain streams, with the full watershed that is the indigenous pathways out of which our ecosystems have built themselves and maintain themselves over time. We need to be recommitting to floodplains along our rivers. These are essential in the success of salmon migrations and nutrient flows into the landscape. We're going to have to remove some of the settlement that's happened in these floodplains. We're going to have to recover shading along the riparian zones where it's been lost. Our dam system is incredibly over-enthusiastic. It's been misrepresented as sustainable. When we now know that because of methane production in the waste that builds up behind dams, they have a global greenhouse gas contribution that's on par with the whole planet's transportation systems. Large-scale dams are no longer accepted by the UN as sustainable technologies or green technologies because of this emerging research. Much of our system still does not have fish ladders, so we need to begin by putting fish ladders into the existing dams, committing ourselves to looking at how can we begin to remove dams, and where we're not yet ready with funding or planning, to lowering the head on dams such as the Dalles Dam, where we could recover Salida Falls, reinvigorate the waters, cool the waters. I think we also need to look at some of the cultural sites in the indigenous landscape, which have been key in the long story. Some of the ceremonial places such as Salilo, such as Kettle Falls, where the ancient cultural understandings have been kept and transmitted over the millennia, and that this can serve as a beginning of a recommitment to comprehending and reintegrating with the ancient legal orders of the landscape. Many of these changes are dramatic, and they may need to be done as a multi-generational commitment. Many of our ecosystems don't move into old growth relationships for as long as 350 years. And this is going to be a multi-generational commitment that we'll need to make. And it's one that is going to free our hearts. It's going to increase the power and the majesty of the landscape. Personally, I believe it is a pathway of hope and of healing for us all here in our region and in our relationships with all the surrounding regions in our planet. Thank you for taking the time to listen and give this your own heartfelt consideration.